Hi, this is the second part of our four-part series on worship. Today we're going to answer the question, what is true worship and false worship? So what kind of worship does God expect? God doesn't accept any kind of worship. And we can see that because in the Bible, there are true worship and there are false worship, meaning there are worship that God accepts and worship that God does not accept. There are many instances in the Bible where God accepts people's worship. And it's more rare to look at unacceptable worship. So I want to focus on that. Some worship in the Bible were seen as unacceptable to God. Genesis 4:3-7, the story of Cain and Abel. God did not accept Cain's offering. 1 Samuel 13, the story between Samuel and Saul. Saul goes against what God has told him to do, and he gives an offering to God before Samuel arrives, even though it was Samuel who was supposed to do that. Leviticus 10:1-3, we see that Aaron's sons did an unauthorized fire before God. We see in Amos 5:21-24 and Isaiah 1:11-17 that God doesn't accept the Israelites' worship because of their wrong actions. From these instances, we can see that worship must be done according to God's will. In the Old Testament, it was either according to what He told the Israelites to do, and they were to follow that law. But sometimes it wasn't just that. Even though all the ritual actions were exactly what God commanded to do, because the Israelites didn't have the right heart nor the character, God did not accept their worship. From that, we can see that God cares about the person's character and heart when they come to worship Him. So is it just in the Old Testament that there's true and false worship? No, because we see in John 4, the passage where Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman at the well. He says that the Father is seeking for true worshipers, those who will worship Him in spirit and truth. So what is true worship? True worship involves our acts of adoration and submission in response to the revelation and initiation of the triune God. We can see that there are 3 points in true worship. First, true worship begins with God. God initiates worship. 2, true worship is Trinitarian. Although we can direct our hymns and prayers to each person of the Trinity, our worship is directed primarily to the Father through the Son Jesus Christ, enabled by the Holy Spirit. And lastly, the 3rd point is true worship requires acts of submission and adoration. So the big point of today is that unlike the call to salvation, which is unconditional, the call to worship is conditional. Meaning, when God calls you to save you, you can come as you are, as a wretched, sinful self, and God will save you. And God expects that. But when He calls you to worship Him, He doesn't expect you to just come as you are if you are living a sinful life. He expects His people to worship Him in spirit and truth, with the right character. And that doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, because there is no one that is perfect. Absolutely not. But what I'm trying to encourage you is the next time you are part of a worship service, please prepare your hearts before. And that's why we have the prelude. We have a few minutes before the service begins to just quiet your hearts and prepare your hearts before God. And when we sing all these songs, I ask you to reflect on your heart and really sing and pray from your heart. Because if we say these prayers and sing these songs without meaning them, are they really true worship before God? A few years ago, I was ministering in Uganda for a week, and I visited a high school and led worship for the students there. I could tell that every single word they were singing was coming from the bottom of their hearts, and they were truly worshiping God. Their worship really moved me, and it challenged me to worship God more earnestly. So if we're singing, for example, I surrender all, and you just don't feel like you can surrender everything to God, that's okay. I would say at those moments, just pause. Instead of singing those lyrics, just pray to God saying, Lord, I want to surrender my everything to you. Lord, I want to give my all to you, but I can't. So give me that heart. Give me that heart that I could say, yes, Lord, I surrender all. And I believe that that is true worship before God. So at the end of the worship service, instead of asking, what did I get out of this worship service? Because actually a lot of people have that mindset, a very consumeristic mindset when they come to a worship service. And it's not completely wrong, but the focus and the main purpose of our worship service should be, how did we glorify our God? And we should ask the question, how did I do in the job of honoring God today? Am I closer to God today than yesterday because of this worship service? Did I truly give my heart and my soul to Him today? I think those are the questions we should ponder after worship service. In part 3 of our worship seminar, we'll talk about why do we do what we do in our worship service.